The Madlanga Commission resumes today at the Brigitte Mabandla Justice College in Pretoria, and Advocate Andrea Johnson, who's the head of the South African Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, IDAC, is set to testify. Now, Advocate Johnson is expected to provide evidence as the Commission continues its investigation into allegations of criminality, corruption and political interference within South Africa's criminal justice system. Advocate Johnson was due to testify before the Madlanga Commission last week, but failed to appear after being hospitalised. Now, to discuss this and other proceedings around the Madlanga Commission, we're joined by security analyst and professor in a police practice department at UNISA, Professor Dumisani Mabunda. Prof, good to have you with us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and greetings to the viewers.
It's been very interesting just looking at what's been happening around the arrests that have been effected by the Commission's task team, and of course looking at how some of those may be linked to evidence that has been heard at the Madlanga Commission. So we saw on Friday the arrest of witness K, and of course the EMPD deputy who's on suspension, Julius Mkhwanazi. And you look at those as just one of several other arrests that have taken place. What are you making of the efficacy of this particular commission?
Yeah, I think, Sakina, we are seeing the effects of this commission. It's very unfortunate that one individual that you mentioned in your intro keeps on being arrested day in and day out. But it shows the seriousness of the commission, that where there's evidence of malpractice, action is taken immediately. But coming back to today's situation, you will note that Advocate Johnson was supposed to have appeared before the commission last week, but we have noted that apparently she was not well, she was admitted. And today is her opportunity to state her side of the story. But what is concerning about some witnesses that have to appear before this commission is that they sometimes use the ostrich approach, that you bury your head in the sand. When you take it out, and the problems will have disappeared. But it's not necessarily the case. Today, South Africans will have an opportunity to hear the side of the story, because there is this concept, od alteram partem, to hear the other side of the story. So we hear the other witnesses making allegations against her. Hopefully she will be able to counter those allegations.
And if you look at how today's proceedings have come about, following her recovery, of course, we saw last week Andrea Johnson going back to work, and then the Commission bypassing voluntary scheduling and directly issuing a fresh subpoena for Johnson to testify and appear today. What signal does that send?
And the Commission don't have the luxury of time. As we all know that its timelines were extended, not by that much time. So they're trying to make sure that all witnesses that have to appear before it are appearing. But unfortunately, sometimes they are frustrated because of issues beyond their control. Some of them appears to be genuine, but some appears to be delaying tactics, hoping that the commission will not be able to have them before the commission. So we hope that all the evidence that have to be presented before the commission, there will be time for that. Otherwise, we will not have a comprehensive report that have to be made public. So I hope that the time will be enough to have all the witnesses appearing before this commission.
And how much of a difference does it make that, given her inability to appear before the commission as scheduled last week, then the commission went on to hear from Colonel Brian Padiachi, who's a senior investigator with IDAC, and that proved to be rather damning, not just for Colonel Padiachi himself, but for IDAC as an institution, and of course its head, Advocate Andrea Johnson, by association.
Yeah, it's so strange. You remember Sakina when she appeared before the ad hoc committee. She was sort of being praised until those allegations appeared last week. So she will have an uphill battle to try and indicate that she didn't influence any case as it is alleged. But I suppose it's going to be a difficult one. Unfortunately, some of these institutions that, when they are established, we praise them before they start their work. They turn out to fizzle out before long. They tend to have their fingers all over the places where they are not supposed to be. That's very unfortunate because when the institutions are established, South Africans have hope that at least there will be justice for everyone, because at this stage it appears that those who have means can be able to enjoy the constitutional rights, but those who have not means, their rights can be trampled upon. So we hope that going forward, looking at Judge Rawling's role that he will be playing to oversee these institutions like IDEC, perhaps there will be some sort of integrity in these institutions, hopefully.
And then we see the establishment of the Ombuds Office. But why would an institution like IDEC, why was an institution such as this allowed to carry on without the requisite oversight to begin with? I would imagine this would be a pivotal question as well. And some would say, well, it might be water under the bridge, but with the benefit of hindsight, we should have known better as a country in terms of setting up a structure such as this and not having sufficient oversight.
Yeah, your question is very important because you look at institutions like IPD, they seem to have been infiltrated by individuals with ulterior motives. This goes back to the vetting issue that we have discussed previously, that institutions that are supposed to deal with sensitive or strategic issues in a country, individuals who have to work in those institutions must have gone through the necessary vetting. But we know that vetting is not foolproof. Once people are comfortable in those positions, it is easy for them to be captured as well. So, but at least if they've gone that first stage of vetting, then we'll know that there will be no need for an oversight body, because we keep on instituting bodies ahead above other bodies that we thought they are capable of doing their work without favor or fear.
And if we just look at some of these specifics, because we've heard a few witnesses testify now with regard to IDEC. There was, of course, the Hawks investigator, Colonel Kobus Roelofse, and he testified that Advocate Johnson had instructed investigators not to pursue specific elements of that assault case involving the now suspended Major General Firoz Khan. Now, from a police practice perspective, how damaging are these specific interference allegations to the credibility of IDEC?
They are very damaging, Sakina. But you note that when you are in that situation and a high-ranking official comes to you and say, this is how we should deal with the case, it is so difficult for you to do otherwise, because you are risking your career as well. So I think it is very, very important that Advocate Johnson dispute what we have heard. If she fails to do that, then we can expect an imminent suspension. We heard that last week there was a meeting between Minister Kubai and Advocate Ndimu Tibi. We don't know what they discussed, but it shows the seriousness that they take regarding the head of IDAC. We hope that during the course of the week, we'll hear the outcome of that meeting.
Indeed. And of course, you know, just to that point of how difficult it is, to go against certain orders or instructions. And I must say, Prof, I do want to, take issue with that, especially if you consider who we are talking about. We are talking about people who are tasked with enforcing the rule of law in this country. You're talking about people who understand the legal parameters of not only their own powers, but everyone else in this country, or I would like to think so. And if at this level, people are afraid to assert what is right, what is correct, then surely we are in a very difficult space as a country.
Yes, the culture, for example, in the police is that you comply and complain later. But there's also another side. If the order or the instruction that one receives is not legal, one is not bound to enforce that instruction. But it puts pressure on the person who is instructed to do certain things. For example, procurement. There's this tendency in most institutions that a bunch of documents will be brought to an officer 5 minutes before they knock off, and they are asked to sign a document. So you in that situation, you don't have a time to read through the documents, and you are asked sign here right now, and it has to be approved tomorrow. So it puts officers that are having integrity in a very difficult situation, because they know that the instruction that I get from my senior is not right. Now I'm forced to comply with it. That's why we saw General Kwanazi, after following all the protocols, and he realized that there's no headway here, and he decided to speak to the nation, which appeared to be not following protocol, but we know the benefits of what he did on the 6th of July in 2025.
But that is the problem, Professor, because if you are given an unlawful instruction, surely there has to be some way where you can say, to use your example, where someone is expected to sign a whole bunch of papers 5 minutes before the deadline. Surely you can say, I can't append my signature to this because I haven't read these documents, and therefore I'm not willing to be bound by what is written there without reading it. And this is my consternation, the fact that there seems to be little to no room or at least appetite to push back against the unlawful instructions that are seemingly being doled out left, right and center within the South African Police Service, and as we hear now, perhaps beyond that in other law enforcement entities.
Yeah, I think good officers that are still there in the police are working under difficult situations, because day in, day out, they receive all sorts of instructions, some of which, according to their consciences, they are not legal. But I hope going forward, those good officers will be given an opportunity to lead strategic positions. Fortunately, with the events that are unfolding in Madlanga Commission, some of these instances where even brigadiers were bullied ended up being recorded. I don't know how they managed to do that. If those recordings were not available to the public, we wouldn't know that even high-ranking officers sometimes are bullied by generals and all those kind of things. So you can imagine a low-ranking or middle-level officer who is worried about his career or a career. So you comply, and maybe you will have an opportunity to complain at the later stage.
But I don't accept that, Prof. And this is the issue. Because when it comes to what constitutes an unlawful instruction, I would imagine the law is patently clear. As a professor of policing practice, there cannot be any ambiguity around that matter. And therefore...
the question, sorry to interject there, Sakina. The question that you're asking, let me give you an example of Section 49 of Criminal Procedure Act, the use of force. An officer knows that if I'm given an instruction to shoot at the person who's running, I cannot do that because I don't know why he's running or whether he's a suspect or not. So you have to weigh options around you, but I can tell you, doing that, trying to do what is legal and not what is legal, you are risking being transferred to other divisions because you are seen as a stumbling block, or perhaps your job will be made tough and you will opt out of that situation.
But
That's
that,
an unfortunate reality.
but that is the crux of the matter then, Prof, where people
Yeah.
don't want to risk being moved, so they would rather comply with the unlawful instructions than actually doing the right thing. And isn't that why we find ourselves as a nation with this situation as it's playing out currently? Because people will just comply so that they can secure their jobs. And I do understand it's not an easy situation and context matters, but it is that context in many instances that has led us to what we find now, a situation where
Exactly.
it seems our police service is rotten from the very top.
Exactly. You've answered that same question, Sakina. That's why the good side of complying with the unlawful orders may be elevation to higher positions. We have seen people who have been parachuted to higher positions and they just joined the SAPS 10 years ago, and you find good officers that were doing their jobs, they couldn't be persuaded to do wrong things. They remain in lower ranks until they retire. So that's why we are where we are today, where we're seeing the road left, right, and center, because people are sometimes forced to comply with illegal orders.
And then just getting back to Andrea Johnson and today, how severely has the public trust in IDAC been damaged by what we've now heard in terms of specific allegations at the Madlanga Commission and still mounting allegations against the leadership of IDAC? You know, how has this impacted on the trust deficit between the public and IDAC?
Generally, the trust deficit in the criminal justice system is at a very low level. I may not have an exact percentage, but people have lost trust in the criminal justice system. For example, in other areas where crime has been committed, many citizens will opt not to even venture to go and report the matter to the police. So you can see the crime statistics currently, when they are released, they are very high, but it's not a good picture because there are some cases that are not reported because of this trust deficit that I'm talking about. So it is difficult to trust that if your matter lands in a NPA or any body that has to decide your case, justice will be done. So we hope that there will be a way of rebuilding this trust going forward after the commission. We're hoping that after the commission, a real transformation in the criminal justice system will start in earnest.
And of course, that is where we have to leave it. The million-dollar question there will be how, but a question for another day. Thank you so much, Professor Dumisani Mabunda, security analyst and professor in police practice department at the University of South Africa. Just previewing Advocate Andrea Johnson's appearance before the Madlanga Commission and looking at other matters around the commission, which is today, of course, on day 144.